What up, paintball world? This is Steven Reyes back at you again with another episode of Next Point Podcast, where each episode we dive deep into some aspect of competitive tournament paintball. On the podcast so far, I've tried my best not to timestamp it. I wanted to discuss principles that'll come up again and again, tournament after tournament. But today I wanted to speak specifically about the last layout. All the things I learned from the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you don't know the field from Tampa 2006, this episode might be a little tough to follow. But I promise you my goal is still the same. Find principles and information that will come up again and again. So maybe after this episode, feel free to watch some footage, Major League Paintball or on YouTube, and give me some ideas. Tell me if you agree or not. Let's have a good debate on the subject. So with that in mind, let's start off with one of the main things that jumped out at me from my time playing the field, play calling, and watching endless footage from Tampa Open 2026. I gotta be on about round number 5, going through all the footage. And the number one thing that kept coming out in the footage is the importance of playing the right bunkers. If you gave episode 4, the recipe, a listen, you know that playing the right bunkers on the field is one of my essential ingredients for winning a national title in tournament paintball. But it made me think, why is a certain bunker or position superior to another? What are the elements that differentiate different positions and their rates of success? So I started writing them down, and I came up with 5 overall characteristics that make a bunker or a position the right one. The right ones for a point, the right ones for a match, the right ones for a tournament. The 5 elements I came up with were makeability, kill production, survivability, control, and finally, vision. So let's go through them real quick. Let's start with makeability. We got to be able to get to the location. Whether it's off the break or during a point, for a position to be viable, we have to be able to get there. Next, kill production. Can we reliably and effectively acquire eliminations from the bunker? Is there opportunities for worthwhile engagements? Next is survivability. How effective can a player survive in this bunker or position? Are there any easy kills, or do I need a shovel to dig this person out? Next is control. From this bunker, am I able to control positions or sides of the field? Do I have access to reliable shooting lanes to deny my opponent's position or advancements? And finally, vision. What can I see in this bunker? What am I not able to see in this bunker? How important and how replaceable is the vision that this bunker offers? In my opinion, these 5 elements cover all the different aspects we need to judge and discern the best and worst positions on a field. And it's important to be open-minded and thoughtful when judging bunkers and positions. You can't fall in love with a position just because it has 1 or 2 of these characteristics in spades. You can't fall out of love with a position or a bunker simply because it lacks one or two of these characteristics. Instead, it has to be judged within the full context of the field. What's capable on the field? What's the pace of the field? What are the strong and weak sections of the field? All these things have to be taken into account. Maybe a bunker has extremely limited kill production, but it has excellent vision on a strong side of the field. Maybe another bunker has strong elements of control in the beginning section of a point, but has rapidly decreasing survivability as the point continues. Sometimes a position becomes more successful and more viable deeper into a tournament simply because the majority of players and teams have decided it can't be viable or it can't be successful. And now as the focus and appreciation moves to other locations, it's now ripe for unexpected usefulness. These complicated relationships between different positions exist all over the field. So it's crucial to constantly assess and reassess these positions and their relationship with one another, from the beginning of layout to the end of the tournament. So I wanted to use this layout as a case study. What bunkers were utilized by the successful teams and which ones were used by less successful teams? And what principles and lessons can we learn in retrospect? So let's start by laying the table for this layout. This was a strong snake side. From all divisions throughout the tournament, the jury was in. The snake side was good. It was incredibly makeable. It had a shot checklist that hit, quite literally, every position on the field, all without going past the snake 50. It was difficult to control and have vision on the snake. It had lots of kill production, and very importantly, it could threaten the end of the game in a moment's notice by progressing to the opponent's side of the field. The second strongest attack and control came through the middle, with options favoring the Dorito side or the snake side. It also had reasonable makeability, had potential for control and vision, and remarkable survivability, depending on the opponent's field development. The most controllable side and easy side to contain was the Dorito. It could be difficult to get wide off the break. In mid-game, it could be difficult to survive against developed middle and snake attacks. And its kill production seemed to lag behind the middle and the snake majority of the time. This seemed to be the order of operations for most successful attacking teams. Snake attack, followed by middle pressure, followed by the Dorito attack. Overall, the field could be played very fast, but it could be played slow if your opponents cooperated. The back line was vulnerable. Lack of vision on the snake side was a repeating issue. Limited shots off the break was a repeating issue. And limited containment on the snake could really punish a backline configuration. As a result, control had a hard go of it this layout. The pocket had a hard go of it this layout. Some of the best shots off the break came from vulnerable positions like dead zones, or running and gunning, or easily pinched out positions like that first center can. This layout, more than others, seemed to reward the wise risk taker, the team willing to seize the initiative, to control the field from the forward position. So with that in mind, what bunkers were the right ones and why? So let's start with the snake side. Let's start with the bunker that got way too much play and was the most over-prioritized. In my opinion, the biggest misplay on the field was the priority the snake corner received. Now, before we talk about its downsides and its shortcomings and trash it, I think it's useful to discuss its upsides. It had reasonable makeability. It had excellent vision on the entire Dorito side. It had some limited ability to slow down an early Dorito attack. It could be used as an entrance point into the snake. It could put pressure on cross-field positions to help a home or Snake Aztec player get to that snake brick or over to the snake 50. It could engage snake highway runners or snake brick players rapping hard. It did indeed have some utility. But what it didn't have is something absolutely essential that all winning game plans require. What it didn't have was tape control. Its Achilles heel and defining characteristic, above all else it had to offer, was it couldn't effectively stop or support a snake attack. This is a principle never to be abandoned on any field or in any game plan. A team must control the tapes. From as best as I could see, all the footage I've watched, the snake corner was punished. It was at its best when the opponents cooperated and did not take advantage of the lack of tape control. But a disciplined snake player, a snake player that knew the field, a snake player that could assess when the snake brick was unoccupied or looking the other way, a player who knew the appropriate height to play at all times, that player really didn't care if there was a snake corner. It ultimately didn't stop their production. It played out over and over. Snake corner lost out to a good snake attack. It was a body out of rotation. It was a body the snake could ignore. It was a body not on the trap and not controlling the tapes. It was a red herring. And that's a principle we can take with us to any field at any time. Bunkers that don't control the tape are worse than bunkers that do. It's an axiom that repeats ad nauseum. Tape control wins points. It wins games. It wins tournaments. We must prioritize the tape and the bunkers that control them. So what's the natural follow-up question? Where did we control the snake tape on this field? Answer: being in the snake. Whether you wanted to attack this field or control this field, the prerequisite was the same. You needed to be in the snake. Preferably two in the snake, with a prioritization of controlling the tape, working the shot checklist, and denying your opponent's progress. Capturing the eliminations while denying your opponent those exact same eliminations. Having a second player controlling the tape, closing distance with the front attacker, and being ready to resume the attack after a trade or an elimination. prioritizing and winning the strong side of the field at all times. The 1-2 package that best exemplified that was Malloy and Hara of the Russians. They spammed snake off the break with great effectiveness, seized control of the snake early, and capitalized on kills from the snake 50. Hara would press, Malloy controlling the tape, closing distance, Hara getting a kill or two, and then moving to their side of the field. Malloy following closely behind. The games would be closing through kills or just plain attrition. Pushing the back lines, invalidating the snake corner players, turning guns and turning games. In the end, there were two teams. Those that prioritized the snake tape and those that didn't. And the ones that didn't, they lost more than they won. Now let's talk about off-the-break kill production and where to do it from. In my estimation, the second most overutilized and underperforming position was the double home configuration. Much like the snake corner, the double home had some utility. For one, it was the only option available if you really wanted to take as little risk as possible off the break. It could have some initial survivability in the first opening seconds of a point. It had some shots, in theory, on the snake runner and snake corner runner. But the double home came with a lot of downsides. To start, the coordination at the box had to be precise. After all, we're talking about two players in a small Aztec. I saw a number of misfires coming from this configuration, up and down all divisions. Secondly, its snake shots were more theoretical than they were practical. The home shot on the snake corner, over the brick, off the break, didn't reap high rewards. Teams that took the snake off the break made it at a very high clip. It had no good shots on the player taking the snake brick off the break. Furthermore, the double home was vulnerable to getting pinched if pressure was put back on it, and if coordination in the bunker wasn't perfect. It was also vulnerable to late game pressure if one or more players weren't able to make it out of that bunker before teams attacked the tape. This gets to another principle to always keep in mind. When certain characteristics are lacking on the field, the more valuable they can be. To demonstrate this principle in action, let's consider the 20-yard line middle can as the alternative to the double home configuration. This bunker shined throughout the tournament. Many successful teams, including the Sunday teams, use this bunker to its full advantage. And this is where it starts to get interesting. The center can had a lot of downsides. If we start evaluating it against the 5 principles of a good bunker, it had a lot lacking. Firstly, it was extremely shootable. It lacked that high percentage makeability that we are looking for in a bunker that will be a linchpin in our game plan. It was definitely a bunker that could be keyed up on. It also had very limited survivability as the game developed. Often it would be one of the first deaths if a team was not able to escape out of it. It lacked control elements due to the difficulty of gunfighting out of a can, and was positioned in a very vulnerable place in the field. But what it did have outshined those downsides drastically. What it did have was excellent kill production on the snake side off the break. Kill production that was impossible to replace from other positions on the field. Different scenarios, those downsides would be too much loss to use as a go-to bunker. But in a scenario of a strong snake, in the scenario of limited replacement options, in a game plan of winning the snake side, losing an interior shooter to eliminate a wide snake runner was more than a fair trade. It was simply good strategy. And it played out like that a lot for this bunker. Additionally, even in the scenario where the snake runner was not eliminated, it had another huge upside that changed the evaluation math. It had vision. It could assess if that runner went to the corner, or went snake off the break, or if that player turned upfield to get to that snake brick or the snake 50 slide over. That vision was literally irreplaceable and crucial within a strong snake side environment. This reflects a principle that must always be respected when evaluating bunker quality. Even when a position has strong downsides, the more irreplaceable the upsides, the more weight and greater consideration we have to give it. The more risk-taking math we have to be ready to calculate. The more we lack something, the more valuable it is. In all aspects of life, this principle remains sound. The more irreplaceable something is, the greater the value, and the more risk we must take to attain it. In the end, the double home was another red herring. What should have been used as a variational change was adopted as best practice, but mostly for the teams who didn't find lasting success. Now let's talk about another useful snake side bunker that, in my opinion, was not used optimally. That's the first snake Aztec. Firstly, it had a great cross shot on players moving up the center wedge on the D side. It had a reasonable cross shot on the first Dorito off the start box. It had limited heads-up quick shots on opposing Aztec players and snake runners. But its most important aspect was the vision for the paintball math. This was a tactic I've seen come up over and over again in layouts where vision on a side is limited. Knowing how many players pass through a particular gap was incredibly crucial. In this scenario, knowing how many players pass the gap, past the snake Aztec, was crucial. It informed your team on how many wide players you were dealing with, while simultaneously informing you how many players were still in the pocket, most likely releasing up the middle. This information was crucial for a strong snake attack. If your team could assess that only one player went through that gap, it could be paired with future information that could strongly affect your ability to attack the snake. Case in point, your team goes snake off the break and snake Aztec. Your Aztec player announces only one player has crossed the gap. Suddenly, from across the field, your teammate screams, "Snake corner." Now, assuming your team has good containment and no one has been allowed to fill out, you have been handed the keys to the castle. You know the one player wide is now in the snake corner with no tape control. And you know there is not a player occupying the snake brick. You have all the freedom in the world to to progress into the opponent's side of the field and turn the entire game. This was an aspect of the snake side I saw lacking in all divisions. Using the vision of the snake Aztec to assess the count on the wide players and to allow for the paintball math to be calculated was very powerful. This position shined when it was used to assess vision and assess the control a team had on the snake. The problem was, this bunker was not meant to be lived out of. A lot of snake Aztecs died to develop snake attacks. The bunker needed to be paired with a strong snake attack and a strong bias to exit the bunker as the game developed, which could be challenging and required passing the job of containment to somebody else. This also demanded your wide player was playing a strong tape game in the snake to ensure that Aztec player had time to exit before being punished. A huge downside to the snake and snake Aztec configuration was an opposing snake attack. So it was crucial that your snake player prioritized the tape and denied the free kills on the back line to another team seizing the snake initiative. Another great bunker on the snake side that was misused by less successful teams on the snake side illustrated another principle to always keep in mind: how a sound game plan can empower unconventional use of a bunker or position. From my view, there was a strong difference in how the best teams and the worst teams used the snake brick. I can't lie, I'm in love with the way the Russians played this layout. And I loved the way J-Rab used the snake brick. The snake brick looking Dorito side was meta. Let's discuss why from the perspective of J-Rab and the Russians. You're J-Rab. You found your way into the snake brick. You have Hara attacking the tape, pushing the envelope. You have Malloy behind him, supporting Hera, and continuing the attack in case of an elimination or trade. You find yourself in a great position with all the freedom in the world. You're getting vision on the Dorito side. You're catching sloppy players in their bunker. You're catching Dorito players overextending forward. You're opening lanes for counterattacks for your Dorito players. You're playing over the top and gaining vision and quick kills. You're back to the snake side, shooting corner, maybe a little wrapping. Back to the D side, back over the top. You're being an absolute menace. Sure, you could get surprised by the 50-yard line mini W on the Dorito side, but most of the time, they're first engagements with the snake players, giving you an opportunity to find them and survive. You are really producing for your team in a bunker with a lot of options. And what is the opposing snake brick player doing? Are they looking cross, giving their back to Hara or Malloy? Are they playing over the top, spying on movements? No. They are fixated on a well-known, well-established gap between the snake 50 and their own snake side. They have effectively taken their gun out of the game. Even worse, the shot checklist and kill production from the snake touched nearly the entire field without even having to cross that gap. A team was more than capable of having a deadly snake attack while the opponent's snake brick player is locked into a gap that you aren't going through until it's clear. So compare the two. J-Rab knows he doesn't have to worry about this gap until the opponents have dealt with Hara and Malloy on the tape. That attack isn't coming to J-Rab's side anytime soon. And man, did he take full advantage of the situation and freedom. The stark differences between these two ways to play that bunker goes back to the principle of a strong game plan facilitating greater use of a bunker. When you play the strong side with tape control and appropriate tempo and proper resources, it frees up other positions to eat. While the opponents are held up in a snake 2 on the inside, shooting at nothing, and a brick player locked into a singular zone that you don't even need to pass, it's a huge difference. Your team is taking control of the tape, supporting the tape attack with multiple bodies, and effectively freeing up a third crucial position by alleviating the threat of an opposing snake attack, alleviating the threat of an opposing tape attack, allowing them to collect free kills, open up crossfield zones, and in the end, be in position to pick up that same trap if in fact all goes wrong. And all this while two opponents basically take their guns out of the game. A brick player on a dead trap and a passive snake player on the inside, man, sometimes it's the game plan that can really affect the success of a position. Something we must always be mindful of, from layout till the tournament's end. So let's discuss another principle of bunker evaluation that requires constant assessment throughout the tournament. The principle is simple. When everyone is sure a position or bunker is bad and unplayable, that's the exact moment it can become good and extremely playable. This is true about sections of the field as well as individual bunkers. It's happened at so many tournaments, it's a wonder why this principle doesn't get its fair due. Oftentimes, as the tournament develops, greater parity occurs, and mirroring breakouts become standard. The strong bunkers have been decided on by teams, and the strong sides have all but been agreed on. However, it's at that moment, in that agreement, where the possibility for a pendulum swing is always laying in wait. As priority moves to certain sides and certain bunkers, as more and more resources, more and more shots and lanes being focused, the surprise element of an underutilized position gains in value. Opportunity can be seized on while the opponents are focused elsewhere. One of those underutilized bunkers from this layout, I believe, was the D-side tower. The run and gun off the break to the Dorito side tower was incredibly juicy, looking at either side of the field. The run and gun off the break to the Dorito tower, putting pressure back at the home, was super useful to facilitate risks wide on the Dorito side, behind the run and gunner. And if the player got there alive, there was a lot to be done. It's a large 35-yard line tower with gaps and zones on both sides of the field. It also had some reasonable exits into the wedge structure if you wanted to audible into a more typical field position. It could be used to sprinkle in the game plan. Something different for that home shooter to worry about. Another bunker the opponent had to respect in your game plan. Something new for that opposing clipboard to have to keep in mind. We have to always be looking, calculating, Are other teams ignoring something? Am I ignoring something? Is there something on the field today that's better than it was on Friday? Is there a pattern that's ready to be exploited? Which brings me to the last section of the field I wanted to discuss. Similar to the Dorito Tower. It's one of those plays and calls that have to be cautiously utilized. It can't be spammed. It can't be overutilized. But it can't be ignored either. It's got to be called at good times and for good reason. It needs to leverage the surprise factor to a greater tactical advantage. That part of the field wasn't a bunker though. It was the dead zones. The dead zones off both sides of the start box fit that criteria. High risk, but potentially high rewards as well. The field ultimately forced a lot of running and gunning. What defeats running and gunning? Stationary shooters. On this field, every shot the home had, there was a dead zone that had it better. The dead zone on the Snake side had excellent heads-up shots. The dead zone D side had excellent heads-up shots. There were crosses available as well as shots back up at the center. There was also certain vision that wasn't even available to the home players. This was a creative way to get an additional gun on a zone you were looking to exploit, or get an additional surprise gun back at the home, facilitating a move wide, capitalizing on the disruption of the home shot, or a disruption of their vision, or even maybe just their elimination. Another way to keep teams guessing. Not letting those shooters just tee off. Making it difficult for the shooters to get comfortable. Always giving that opposing coach more to think about. These are those little percentages we have to be looking for as players and as coaches to make sure our game plans are well-rounded, to make sure we remain unpredictable while at the same time spending the majority of our time at the high percentage bunkers. The ones that control tapes, the ones that control sides of the field, that yield the kills we need for victory. We have to remain vigilant. We have to stay humble. We have to stay curious. We have to play the right bunkers. And we have to keep asking ourselves again and again, what am I missing? So what do you think of that? Do you agree with the bunkers I described in this podcast? Were there other bunkers that had utilization that was left on the table? Were there other bunkers that were used that maybe were used a little too much? Sound off in the comments if you think so. Let's have a good discussion about this layout. And as always, let's try to find principles that we can repeat over and over again, ensuring victory. So once again, thank you for joining me on another episode of Next Point Podcast. If you're enjoying the content, like, subscribe, in all the usual podcast places. And until the next time, on to the next point.